Hello and welcome to today's video. So the title of today's video is Let's Make Some Monster Parts. So what does that mean? Why wouldn't I just make the whole monster? Well, I'm going to tell you why. When I sculpt a lot of my monsters, I like to pre-make a lot of the parts like the teeth, the horns, sometimes the eyes, and that way when I'm sculpting the monster I can insert those pieces in there and I don't have to worry about them getting distorted. So if you've worked with polymer clay, it can get pretty soft, and lots of times, when you're working on one section of it, you might mess up another, and that's why a lot of artists will do so much of a sculpture and then bake it, and that way they have something to hold on to and they can add more and then bake it again, because polymer clay allows you to bake it several times. I don't know if there's technically a limit, as long as you don't do it too hot. I think I've maxed out about 6 times, maybe 7, that I've done a sculpture. But anyway, back to what I'm doing today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make some monster parts. I'm going to do some teeth, some eyes, some horns, and some tongues. Now these monster parts will be used in upcoming videos for monsters I'm making, but it'll also be used in my live stream. And my first live stream will be February 23rd at 2 p.m. Central Time, 2020. So if you're watching this before that, be sure to check that out. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel and ring that notification bell, and you should get an alert or a little, notification that I'm live. Also, if you want to check my schedule, I'll make sure to post in the community tab when I'm doing live streams. I'm going to try to do one a month, and it'll always be, let's make a monster. But to save time, I am going to pre-make a lot of the parts. And that way I can sculpt the monster and add it to it, and it can be all done in one session, where a lot of sculptures with with a decent amount of detail take multiple sessions, and that's not really going to work for a live stream. So I figured this way, it's kind of like those cooking shows where they put something in the oven and they open up another oven and it's already done, and so it's my way of saving time on doing the live stream, but I didn't want to leave out how to do this. So I thought this video would be a good way for you guys to look at how I'm doing these, and that way you're not missing a step when you go to watch the live stream. Anyway, enough of me rambling on. Let's get started with making some monster parts. The first thing I'm going to make is some eyeballs. So I want them to have a little bit of a shine to them even before adding a gloss coat. So to do that, I'm going to mix the white Primo Sculpey with pearl Primo Sculpey. And then I'm just going to roll out some ball shapes. And right now, I'm trying to make them about the same size, so they'll kind of match up. But realistically, I'm just going to throw them all into a little container, and I'll just pick out eyeballs as I make the monsters. So it's not really as important, and I'm not worried about them having the same size eyes. Sometimes it's fun to have one big eye and one small eye, or if I do multiple eyes, I might have a larger, like center eye, and then if I do some smaller eyes around it. But I just wanted to do some that were the same size with the option of being able to mix and match as I go. And what I do here is just kind of a start. I'll go ahead and probably make some more up as I go along with the live streams. But, for today, I just wanted to show how I was doing these, so that way you knew the process that went into them before we get to the live stream. So now that I've got all the eyeballs rolled out, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands, get them nice and clean, and then I'm going to add the pupils. So I'm just taking Primo Black Clay, getting it a little bit soft, then I'm going to roll it out into a snake. Now I'm just going to cut off very small pieces that I can use for the pupils. Now if you want, to do something similar, you can use different colors and use, the color for the iris and then add the pupil. But for these guys, I'm just going to keep it simple and just add a pupil to them and kind of go from there. Later I might go ahead and do some color dyes, and I might change it so the eyeball color itself is a different color, or do some glow-in-the-dark eyes like I've done with several of my other monsters. And that's always fun to do, especially when you have a collection sitting on the shelf and you shut off the lights to the room for the night and all these little monsters are looking at you. But I'm just going to go through and finish up putting pupils on these, doing them different sizes. And now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands again, get them really clean because that black gets into the crevices and I don't want any transfer. So for the teeth, I'm mixing some Primo translucent with some Primo white, and then I'll add a little bit of Primo yellow. Now my translucent was very crumbly, and I don't think it was that old, but I don't know how long it's been at the store. So I had to mix it really well with that white. And then I did 2 different shades of it. One of them has a little bit more yellow, and you'll see that kind of to the top there. So the first grouping of teeth I'm going to use with the lighter shade. And you can mix and match these in the monster to give him some different shades to his teeth. But I'm just going to do some, more human-like teeth with these. And I'm going to go ahead and add like a little bit of root in there, and it's kind of a reverse extraction technique to place these into the monster's mouth. Once I get a few of these done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to roll them out into like little snakes and then make these little like spiky teeth. They're kind of like fangs, but I want to make them very small. What I'm going to do, or what I try to do, is I have it a little bit fatter in the center and then I roll it down so both ends are sharp, are pointy, and that way I can stick it in, the same way I'm doing with the human style teeth. So I'm going to go ahead and do a few more like this, and then I'll go ahead and switch over to the clay that has a little more yellow into it, make them look a little more stained. I definitely think if I'm doing a monster with multiple teeth, it'll be fun to use the different shades, because teeth themselves aren't always necessarily all the same shade. So next I'm going to make some horns, and I'm going to start with the darker yellow translucent white mixture that I did for the darker teeth, and I'm just going to shape out some different styles of horns. And I like to kind of add like a little bit of a twist to them, make them a little more visually interesting. Now I'm going to do some regular yellow, and I'm just using the Primo yellow straight off of the block. So you don't always have to mix stuff, but if you want to, have variations of colors, obviously you're going to want to do some mixing of your clay. So you can see here, this is kind of like a rhinoceros type horn, and I'm going to go ahead and add some texture to it. So it'll, have some indentions along the edges of there. And I do put a little bit of an end on most of these, so that way they can stick into the sculpture and stay. Now I went ahead and added some black in there and swirled it in to give it kind of a marble look. Now I've cleaned up my area, and I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands really good, and I'm going to make some tongues. So I'm just taking the Primo blush clay, and I mixed it with some pearl. And now I'm going to show you how I'm going to sculpt out one of them. Get a little bit slower, get a little closer, so you can see how I can get the tongue shape. And then it's nice to add a little bit of a curve to it, give it some movement. And then I'm going to add some texture with a ball tool. I want this to be kind of a rough tongue. And what'll be fun is I can add a gloss coat afterwards. Even though I mixed the pearl with it to give it some shine, you add a gloss coat, it'll make it look wet. And then the last thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to do a little indentation so I can add a wire. So I'm going to just put the small piece of wire in there, and that way it'll help support it when I put it in the monster's mouth. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do a bunch of other tongues to give me some options. And I don't always put tongues on the monster, so I didn't make a lot of those. But if I do want one with his mouth open, I have that option. Now I'm going to go ahead and bake these according to package instructions. And here are all my finished monster parts that I can use in my Let's Make a Monster live stream. So here's a close-up of one of the tongues. You can see it's got the wire sticking out, so I can insert it into the monster's mouth and it'll give it some support. Then I did these pair of horns. I could even either have them going up on the monster's head or have them down and wrap around a little bit, kind of like a ram's horns. take a look at a couple of the eyeballs. And so to me they look very much like, like a Cookie Monster or Grover's eyeballs. And you can even have them looking in different ways, unnatural, kind of weird, monster faces. And then we'll take a look at some of the teeth. So here's some of the more, almost human style teeth. And then we'll take a look at some of the spiky teeth. So I've got several different sizes here, so I can do, monsters with lots of little teeth or a couple big teeth or whatever. And I have these little tins. So I'm going to go ahead and put all the pieces in there. And that way I can have them sorted out, so when I go to make the monster, it'll be really easy for me to find the exact parts I want to use on the monster I'm making at that time. These containers are nice. They have lids and they're pretty shallow, so it'll be easy to see everything and plenty of room to add more pieces to them. Before I end today's video, I do want to share with you an example of how I used pre-baked pieces in my final sculptures. So a lot of you have probably seen my carrot monster video, but if you haven't, here's a short little clip of adding the teeth to it. So I had pre-baked the teeth, and now I'm sculpting out the mouth area, and I went ahead and I'm just adding the pre-baked teeth on top of the carrot monster's gum area. Sometimes you can insert them in, like pushing them in, but I didn't have enough. It wasn't deep enough, so I just pressed these in on top. And then I just added, more to his mouth, kind of his upper and lower lip area to cover up what would be like the roots of the teeth. And this worked out really well, and these pieces are way too small and very thin to add them unbaked. And I'm not saying it's impossible to do it that way. I just know with my experience, it's a lot easier to pre-bake these pieces and then add them to your sculpture as you're doing your finished one. Well, anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see what I do with these monster parts, be sure to check out my Let's Make a Monster live stream on February 23rd at 2 p.m. Central Time. If you're watching the video after that date, I will be doing, hopefully, a monthly Let's Make a Monster live stream. Alright, well thanks for watching, and remember, never stop creating. Bye!